I should have known something was wrong when Madison started ordering wine that cost more than my car payment. But there I was, sitting at the mahogany table in her father's dining room, watching my wife of 3 years swirl a glass of Château Margaux like she'd been born to it, while Franklin Ashworth III glared at me over his reading glasses. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "So Tyler," Franklin said, cutting into his perfectly prepared filet mignon with surgical precision, "Madison tells me you're still working at that little accounting firm downtown." The way he said little made it sound like I was selling pencils on a street corner. I forced a smile and took a sip of the wine that probably cost more than I made in a week. "Actually, it's financial analysis," I corrected. "We handle investment portfolios for several major clients." Franklin's laugh was like ice cracking. "How quaint. Madison, dear, perhaps Tyler doesn't understand the kind of lifestyle our family maintains." Madison giggled, actually giggled, and reached over to pat my hand like I was a confused child. "Daddy, be nice. Tyler's doing his best." His best. As if I was some charity case she'd taken pity on. "The thing is, son," Franklin continued, and I hated how he called me son while looking at me like something he'd scrape off his shoe. "When Madison finishes law school next year, she'll be joining one of the most prestigious firms in the city. She'll need a partner who can keep up." The implication hung in the air like a bad smell. Madison said nothing, just kept sipping her wine and avoiding my eyes. "I think I can keep up just fine," I said, my voice steady, despite the anger building in my chest. "Can you?" Franklin leaned back in his chair, a predatory smile playing at his lips. "Because I've done some research on your little firm, Tyler. Your salary is what, $60,000 a year? Maybe 70 with bonuses?" I felt my face flush. The number was closer to 85, but I wasn't about to get into a pissing contest with Madison's father. "Money isn't everything, Mr. Ashworth." Spoken like someone who's never had any. Franklin's smile widened. "Let me be clear, Tyler. Madison is accustomed to a certain standard of living. Country club memberships, vacations in the Hamptons, a proper home in the right neighborhood. Can you provide that on your accountant's salary?" "Financial analyst," I corrected again, but my voice sounded weak even to me. "Whatever you call yourself, the math doesn't work." Franklin pulled out his phone and started tapping on the screen. "A decent house in Madison's preferred neighborhood runs about $800,000. The country club initiation fee alone is $50,000 plus monthly dues. Then there's the car payments, the vacations, the social obligations." He turned his phone toward me, showing a spreadsheet he'd apparently prepared in advance. Every number was highlighted in red. "Based on your current income, you'd need to increase your salary by approximately 400% to maintain Madison's lifestyle. Do you see that happening anytime soon?" I looked at Madison, waiting for her to defend me, to tell her father that we'd figure it out together, that love mattered more than money. Instead, she was studying her wine glass like it contained the secrets of the universe. "Madison?" I said quietly. She finally looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes that made my stomach drop. Doubt, maybe even embarrassment. "Daddy has a point, Tyler. I mean, we haven't really talked about the practical stuff. Where we'll live, how we'll afford the kind of life I want." "The kind of life you want?" I repeated. "What happened to the life we want?" Franklin cleared his throat. "Perhaps you two should discuss this privately. But Tyler, I want you to understand something." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than if he'd been shouting. "My daughter will not live in some cramped apartment clipping coupons and shopping at discount stores. She deserves better than that. She deserves better than you." The words hit me like a physical blow. I looked around the dining room, at the crystal chandelier, the oil paintings that probably cost more than I'd make in 5 years, the silver service that had been in Madison's family for generations. and suddenly felt very small. I love your daughter, Mr. Ashworth, and she loves me. Love. Franklin practically spat the word. Love doesn't pay for private school tuition or retirement funds. Love doesn't buy respect or social standing. Love is a luxury for people who can afford it. Madison was nodding along with her father's words, and something inside me broke. This woman I'd married, who'd promised to love me for better or worse, was sitting there agreeing that I wasn't good enough for her. Maybe I should go, I said, standing up from the table. Tyler, wait. Madison reached for my arm, but her grip was half-hearted. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic. That's what I was being. Not hurt, not betrayed. Dramatic. No, I think your father's made his position very clear. And apparently, so have you. I walked toward the door, my footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Behind me, I heard Franklin say, Madison, dear, you're young. There's still time to make better choices. I drove home in silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Our apartment, our cramped, discount store-furnished apartment, felt different when I walked through the door. Smaller somehow. Shabbier. Madison came home 3 hours later, slightly drunk and defensive. You embarrassed me tonight, she said, kicking off her heels and leaving them in the middle of the living room floor. Running out like that. I embarrassed you? I stared at her in disbelief. Your father spent the entire evening explaining why I'm not good enough for you, and you just sat there nodding along. He's not wrong, though, is he? The words came out slurred but clear enough to cut deep. I mean, look at this place, Tyler. Look at us. I'm about to graduate from law school, and you're still doing data entry for small businesses. Financial analysis, I said for the third time that night, but it felt pointless now. Whatever. The point is, I'm moving up in the world and you're... She gestured vaguely in my direction. You're not. I felt something cold settle in my chest. So what are you saying, Madison? She sank onto our second-hand couch and put her head in her hands. I don't know. I thought things would be different by now. I thought you'd be making more money, that we'd have a house, that I wouldn't have to explain to my friends why my husband drives a 10-year-old Honda. I'm working on it. The Peterson account alone could bring in enough commission to... Could, might, maybe. Madison looked up at me with eyes that had gone cold. I'm tired of maybes, Tyler. I want guarantees. Marriage doesn't come with guarantees. Rich marriages do. The words hung between us like... I stared at my wife, really looked at her, and realized I was seeing her clearly for the first time in years. The woman I'd fallen in love with, who'd seemed so different from her privileged family, had been an illusion. Or maybe she'd just been pretending until she didn't have to anymore. I see, I said quietly. Do you? Because I'm not sure you do. Madison stood up, swaying slightly. I have opportunities, Tyler. Real opportunities. There are people at my internship, successful people, who understand what I want out of life. Something in her tone made me freeze. What kind of people? People who can provide the things you can't. The admission hit me like a sledgehammer. Are you cheating on me? Madison's face went white, then red. That's not... You can't just accuse me of... I'm not accusing. I'm asking. Are you sleeping with someone else? She turned away from me, and that was answer enough. Who is it? Tyler, please, let's not do this tonight. Who is it? My voice was getting louder, but I didn't care. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. Madison spun around, and suddenly she looked more like her father than I'd ever noticed before. Cold, calculating, superior. Fine. You want to know? His name is Brent. He's a senior associate at Morrison, Klein & Associates. He makes $300,000 a year, he drives a BMW, and he doesn't live in a shitty apartment with furniture from garage sales. Each word was a knife twist. How long? Does it matter? It matters to me. Madison shrugged. 6 months. Maybe 7. 7 months. Half of our marriage had been a lie. I want you out, I said. This is my apartment too. Then I'll leave. But this marriage is over. Madison's expression softened slightly, as if she was just realizing what she'd done. Tyler, wait. Maybe we can work this out. Maybe if you got a better job or what? You'd stop sleeping with your rich boyfriend? She flinched at the language, but nodded. If things changed, if you changed, maybe we could try again. I looked at her standing there in our living room, still beautiful, still the woman I'd thought I'd spend my life with, and felt nothing but disgust. No, Madison, we couldn't, because I finally understand what your father was trying to tell me tonight. You're right. You do deserve better than me. You deserve someone exactly as shallow and money-obsessed as you are. I hope you and Brent are very happy together. I went to our bedroom and started packing a bag. Madison followed me, suddenly crying. Please don't leave like this. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix. You made your choice 7 months ago. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. I stopped packing and looked at her. No, Madison. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk on the way home. A mistake is double booking dinner plans. Sleeping with another man for 7 months while telling your husband you love him isn't a mistake. It's a choice. And now I'm making mine. I finished packing and headed for the door. Madison grabbed my arm. Where will you go? Somewhere I can afford on my little accountant's salary. I left her crying in our apartment and drove to my friend Mike's bar downtown. Mike Kowalski had been my college roommate and was one of the few people who'd never made me feel like I wasn't good enough. He took one look at my face and poured me a double whiskey without asking. Want to talk about it? He asked. I told him everything, about dinner with Franklin, about Madison's confession, about the rich boyfriend with the BMW. Mike listened without interrupting, occasionally refilling my glass. So what are you going to do? He asked when I finished. Divorce her, I guess. Try to move on. Mike shook his head. That's it? She humiliates you, cheats on you, throws your marriage away for some asshole with money, and you're just going to walk away? What else can I do? Mike leaned across the bar, his expression serious. You can make her pay. I'm not going to hurt her, Mike. I'm not talking about hurting her. I'm talking about making her face consequences. Right now, she thinks she can have her cake and eat it too. She gets to keep her rich boyfriend and her safety net husband until she decides which one she wants more. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you stop being a doormat and start being a man who demands respect. Mike's words echoed in my head as I drove to a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. The room smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams, but it was clean, and it was mine. I lay on the thin mattress, staring at the water-stained ceiling, and thought about everything that had happened. Madison was right about one thing. I had been playing defense my entire life, always trying to prove I was good enough, smart enough, successful enough. Always apologizing for who I was instead of demanding that people accept me or get out of my way. But maybe it was time to play offense. I pulled out my phone and started making a list of everything I knew about Madison's life, her friends, her family, her precious internship. If she wanted to play games with people's lives, maybe it was time she learned that other people could play too. And maybe, just maybe, I was better at it than she thought. The next morning, I woke up in that motel room with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Madison had shown me who she really was, and now I was going to show her who I could be. I called in sick to work and spent the day setting up my new life. First stop, a lawyer's office. Janet Morrison, no relation to Madison's firm, was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who specialized in divorce cases. How long were you married? She asked, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. 3 years, but she's been cheating for 7 months with someone from her law firm. Janet looked up. Do you have proof? She admitted it, but I can get more. Good. In this state, adultery affects the division of assets. If we can prove she was using marital funds to support her affair, we might be able to get you more than the standard 50-50 split. I liked Janet immediately. She didn't waste time on sympathy or ask me how I was feeling. She just focused on the facts and how to use them to my advantage. What about her family's money? Unless it was given directly to both of you as a couple, it's not marital property. But if she used any of it for joint expenses while she was cheating, that could be relevant. I left Janet's office with a clear plan and a retainer agreement. The next stop was the bank, where I opened a new checking account and transferred exactly half of our joint savings, my legal right as a spouse. Madison would get a notification, but that was fine. I wanted her to know I was serious. Then I drove to Madison's law firm. Morrison, Klein & Associates occupied 3 floors of a glass tower downtown, the kind of place that screamed money and success. I parked across the street and waited. At 12:30, Madison emerged from the building with a tall, dark-haired man in an expensive suit. He was handsome in that generic country club way that Madison's family valued. Strong jaw, perfect teeth, the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. This had to be Brent. I followed them to an upscale restaurant 6 blocks away, staying far enough back to avoid being seen. They were seated at a corner table, and I watched through the window as Brent reached across to hold Madison's hand. She was laughing at something he said, looking happier than I'd seen her in months. The sight should have hurt, but instead I felt a cold satisfaction. They were being careless, meeting in public, acting like a couple. This would be easy to document. I took photos with my phone, making sure to capture their faces and the intimate gestures. Then I went inside and requested a table with a view of theirs. "Told him last night," Madison was saying as I settled into my seat 2 tables away. "About us." "How did he take it?" Brent's voice was smooth, cultured, the kind of voice that had never had to ask for anything twice. "Better than I expected, actually. I think he knew it was coming." "And the divorce? He'll probably file this week. My lawyer says it should be straightforward since we don't have kids or significant assets." Brent laughed. "No offense, but what assets could he have? Isn't he some kind of bookkeeper?" Madison giggled. "Financial analyst? But yeah, he makes like $80,000 a year. It's embarrassing." "Well, you won't have to be embarrassed much longer. Once you graduate and join the firm, we can make this official." "What about your wife?" I nearly choked on my water. Brent was married? "Sarah and I have been over for years. We're just going through the motions until the kids are older. She knows about you." "She does?" "She doesn't care, as long as I keep paying the bills. It's a very civilized arrangement." Madison looked uncomfortable. "I don't want to be the other woman forever, Brent." "You won't be. Give me 2 years to get the kids settled and we'll make it official. In the meantime, you'll have your career, your independence. We can travel, enjoy ourselves without all the domestic complications." I'd heard enough. I paid for my untouched sandwich and left, my mind racing. Brent wasn't just Madison's affair partner. He was a serial cheater who was stringing her along with promises he had no intention of keeping. This was even better than I'd hoped. I spent the rest of the week building my case. I followed Madison and Brent to 3 more lunch dates, a hotel rendezvous, and a shopping trip where he bought her a necklace that probably cost more than my car. I documented everything, building a timeline that showed a clear pattern of adultery using marital funds. But the real breakthrough came when I remembered something Madison had mentioned months ago. She'd been working late on a case involving one of the firm's biggest clients, a real estate development company. She'd complained about having to review contracts and financial records, boring work that kept her at the office until midnight. Except now I knew she hadn't been working late. She'd been with Brent. I did some research on the case and discovered that Morrison, Klein & Associates had billed their client for over 200 hours of Madison's time during the period when she was supposed to be working on their files. If she'd been with Brent instead of working, that was billing fraud. I called Janet with my findings. "This is good," she said after I explained what I'd discovered. "Billing fraud is a serious ethics violation. If we can prove she was falsifying her timesheets, it could affect her ability to practice law." "Can we prove it?" "The hotel receipts help. If she was checked into a hotel with her boyfriend during hours she claimed to be working on client files, that's pretty damning evidence." I felt a surge of satisfaction. Madison thought she was so smart, so much better than me, but she'd gotten sloppy and now her arrogance was going to cost her. "There's something else," I told Janet. "Her boyfriend is married. He's been telling her his wife knows about the affair, but I don't think that's true." "How do you know?" "Just a hunch. But if his wife doesn't know, and if I could prove he's been using firm resources to support his affair with Madison—" Janet was quiet for a moment. "That's a dangerous game, Tyler. You start involving third parties, things can get complicated fast. I'm not going to do anything illegal, but if the truth happens to come out, just be careful and document everything." That evening, I sat in my motel room and made a new plan. Madison had spent our entire marriage making me feel small, inadequate, not good enough for her world. Her family had treated me like a charity case, and her boyfriend thought I was a joke. It was time to show them all what a motivated financial analyst could accomplish when he put his mind to it. I started with Brent's wife. A little online research revealed that Sarah Hutchins Morrison lived in a colonial mansion in the suburbs with their 2 teenage children. She was on the board of several charities and had her own Instagram account filled with pictures of family vacations and dinner parties. Recent posts showed her celebrating their 20th wedding anniversary, talking about how blessed she was to have such a devoted husband. Either she was the world's best actress, or Brent had been lying to Madison about his wife knowing about the affair. I spent hours scrolling through Sarah's social media, looking for any sign that she knew about her husband's infidelity. Instead, I found post after post celebrating their marriage, their family, their perfect life together. Brent wasn't just cheating on his wife. He was letting her humiliate herself publicly by bragging about their happy marriage while he was sleeping with my wife. The more I learned about Sarah Hutchins Morrison, the more I liked her. She'd given up her own legal career to raise their children and support Brent's ambitions. She volunteered at homeless shelters and animal rescues. She seemed like a genuinely good person who deserved to know what kind of man she was married to. But I had to be smart about this. If I contacted Sarah directly, it would look like revenge. I needed her to discover the truth in a way that seemed natural, inevitable. I thought about it for days, turning the problem over in my mind like a Rubik's Cube. Then, while I was reviewing the hotel receipts for the 3rd time, the solution hit me. Credit card statements. Brent had been paying for his dates with Madison using what was probably a joint credit card account. All I had to do was make sure Sarah saw the charges in a context that would make their true nature obvious. I couldn't access their credit card records directly, but I didn't need to. I had something better. Detailed documentation of every date, every gift, every hotel room. All I had to do was create a timeline and let Sarah connect the dots herself. I spent the weekend creating a comprehensive dossier, photos of Brent and Madison together, receipts from restaurants and hotels, a timeline showing the pattern of their affair. I included everything except my own identity. As far as anyone would know, this could have come from a private investigator, a concerned friend, or even someone at the law firm who'd noticed their behavior. The package was professional, thorough, and devastating. On Monday morning, I mailed it to Sarah Hutchins Morrison with a simple note. "I thought you should know the truth about your husband's activities. A concerned friend." Then I sat back and waited for the explosion. The explosion came sooner than I expected. I was having lunch at Mike's bar on Tuesday when my phone buzzed with a text from Madison. "We need to talk, now." I showed the message to Mike, who grinned. "Sounds like someone's day just got a lot more interesting." Should I ignore it? Hell no. This is the part where you get to watch everything fall apart. But don't seem too eager. Make her sweat a little. I waited an hour before responding. I'm at Murphy's downtown. You can find me there if it's important. Madison arrived 20 minutes later, looking like she'd been through a blender. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and her hands were shaking. "What did you do?" she hissed, sliding into the booth across from me. "I ordered a burger. Want one?" "Oh, wait, I forgot. You only eat at places that cost more than my car payment now." "Cut the shit, Tyler. Sarah Morrison showed up at our office this morning with photos of me and Brent, photos that someone mailed to her house." I took a sip of my beer and tried to look confused. "Sarah Morrison? Should I know who that is?" "Brent's wife, you asshole. Someone sent her a whole dossier about our relationship. Pictures, receipts, hotel records, everything." "Wow. That sounds terrible. What did she do?" Madison's eyes were wild. "What did she do? She marched into the senior partner's office and dumped everything on his desk. Then she screamed at Brent in front of the entire firm. They had to call security to escort her out." "Yikes. That must have been embarrassing." "Embarrassing?" Madison leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Tyler, they fired me. They fired me. Said I was a liability to the firm's reputation." I felt a warm glow of satisfaction, but kept my expression neutral. "That seems harsh. I mean, what you do in your personal life shouldn't affect your job, right?" "Don't play dumb. This has your fingerprints all over it." "My fingerprints?" "Madison, I'm a financial analyst who makes $80,000 a year and drives a 10-year-old Honda. How exactly would I have the resources to hire a private investigator to follow you around?" She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. The problem with people who think they're smarter than everyone else is that they often overlook the simple explanations. "You've been following us yourself," she said finally. "Have I? When? I work 40 hours a week, and I've been living in a motel since you kicked me out. When exactly would I have had time to stalk you and your boyfriend?" Madison's face crumpled. "My life is ruined, Tyler. The law firm fired me, which means I'll probably get kicked out of law school. My father is furious. And Brent?" She started crying. "Brent won't even take my calls. His wife is threatening to take him for everything in the divorce, and he's blaming me for the whole thing." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I almost meant it. Almost. "Are you? Because you look pretty happy about it." "I look like a man who's been vindicated. You told me I wasn't good enough for you, that you deserved better. Turns out your better was a married man who was lying to both you and his wife. How's that working out for you?" Madison wiped her eyes with a napkin. "He said he loved me. I'm sure he did. Right up until loving you started costing him money. You don't understand. We had plans. He was going to leave his wife, and we were going to be together. Madison, the man has been married for 20 years and has 2 kids. Did you really think he was going to throw all that away for a law student with no money of her own?" The words hit home. Madison flinched like I'd slapped her. "I have money. My family has money." "Your family's money, not yours. And your family's money comes with strings, doesn't it? Like marrying the right kind of person, maintaining the right kind of reputation. How do you think Daddy's going to feel about his daughter being the other woman in a messy divorce scandal?" Madison went pale. "He doesn't know yet. He will. This kind of thing doesn't stay quiet in your social circle." She put her head in her hands. "What am I going to do?" For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy. This was the woman I'd married, after all. The woman I'd loved enough to put up with her family's condescension and her own growing dissatisfaction with our life together. But then I remembered the look in her eyes when her father was explaining why I wasn't good enough for her. The way she'd nodded along when he calculated my inadequacies down to the penny. The casual cruelty in her voice when she told me about Brent and his BMW and his $300,000 salary. "I don't know, Madison, but I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're smart, remember? Much smarter than your accountant husband." Financial analyst, she said automatically, then looked up at me with something that might have been recognition. You did this. I don't know how, but you did this. I didn't do anything except protect my own interests. You want to blame someone for your problems? Try looking in a mirror. I stood up and threw a 20 on the table. Good luck with everything, Madison. I hope you and Brent are very happy together. Oh, wait. He's not taking your calls anymore, is he? I walked away, leaving her crying in the booth. Mike caught my eye from behind the bar and gave me a subtle thumbs up. Outside, I called Janet to update her on the situation. They fired her? Janet sounded impressed. That's going to make the divorce proceedings much simpler. Without a job, she won't be able to claim potential future earnings. What about the billing fraud? If the firm fired her, they probably found evidence of it during their investigation. That could result in disciplinary action from the State Bar Association. Meaning? Meaning she might not be able to practice law even if she does graduate. This could follow her for years. I felt another surge of satisfaction. Madison had been so confident that her law degree was her ticket to a better life, a life without me. Now that ticket might be worthless. But I wasn't done yet. That evening, I drove to Franklin Ashworth's house, the same mansion where he'd humiliated me just a week ago, explaining in detail why I wasn't good enough for his daughter. I parked at the end of the long driveway and walked to the front door. The same marble steps, the same intimidating entrance. But this time, I wasn't the supplicant coming to beg for approval. This time, I had information Franklin needed to hear. The housekeeper answered the door and led me to Franklin's study. He was sitting behind a massive oak desk, reading what looked like legal documents. Tyler. He didn't look up from his papers. I assume you're here about the divorce. I hope you're not expecting any kind of settlement from our family assets. Actually, Mr. Ashworth, I'm here as a courtesy. I thought you should know about Madison's situation before you heard it from someone else. That got his attention. He looked up, his eyes sharp and calculating. What situation? I sat down in the leather chair across from his desk, without being invited. Madison was fired from her internship today. Something about an inappropriate relationship with a married senior associate. Franklin's face went very still. Explain. I told him everything, watching his expression grow darker with each detail. The affair, the billing fraud, the public confrontation with Brent's wife, the firing. How do you know all this? He asked when I finished. Madison told me herself. She seemed to think I was somehow responsible for her problems. Are you? I met his eyes steadily. I'm a financial analyst who makes $80,000 a year and drives a 10-year-old Honda, remember? What could I possibly do to someone as smart and sophisticated as your daughter? Franklin stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him remembering his own words from the week before. The casual dismissal, the calculated humiliation, the spreadsheet showing why I wasn't good enough for his family. I see, he said finally. The thing is, Mr. Ashworth, I'm not vindictive. I didn't want this marriage to end, and I certainly didn't want Madison to destroy her career. But she made her choices, and now she has to live with the consequences. What do you want from me, Tyler? Nothing. Like I said, this is just a courtesy. I thought you should know what people are going to be saying about your daughter before it becomes public knowledge. Franklin's jaw tightened. In his world, reputation was everything, and Madison had just destroyed hers in the most public way possible. There will be a divorce, I continued. My lawyer says it should be straightforward, especially now that Madison doesn't have a job. I'm not looking to take anything that isn't rightfully mine, but I also won't be taken advantage of. I wouldn't expect you to be. The respect in his voice was grudging, but it was there. For the first time since I'd known him, Franklin Ashworth was looking at me like an equal. There's one more thing, I said, standing to leave. You were right about the math. On my salary, I couldn't have given Madison the lifestyle she wanted. But here's what you didn't calculate. I never would have been stupid enough to throw away a 20-year marriage and a successful career for someone who was just using me for money and status. Franklin said nothing, but I saw him wince. Madison got exactly what she deserved, a man who values money over everything else, just like she does. The only problem is, he valued his money more than he valued her. I left Franklin sitting in his study, staring at the legal documents on his desk. Outside, I sat in my 10-year-old Honda and allowed myself a moment of pure satisfaction. A week ago, these people had made me feel like nothing. They'd calculated my worth down to the penny and found me lacking. They'd laughed at my job, my car, my modest ambitions. Now Madison was unemployed and facing potential disbarment. Brent was dealing with a messy divorce and professional disgrace. And Franklin was realizing that his daughter had inherited his values, but not his intelligence. I started the car and drove back to my motel room, already planning my next move. The divorce proceedings would be starting soon, and I wanted to make sure I was ready for whatever Madison and her family might try to throw at me. But first, I had one more call to make. Mike, it's Tyler. You still know that reporter from the Business Journal? The one who covers legal industry news? I think I might have a story she'd be interested in. The story broke 3 days later. Billing Scandal Rocks Prestigious Law Firm was the headline in the Metro Business Journal. The article detailed how Morrison, Klein & Associates was conducting an internal investigation into fraudulent billing practices after an unnamed intern was discovered falsifying timesheets while conducting an extramarital affair with a senior partner. The reporter, Jessica Chen, had done excellent work. She'd confirmed the basic facts without naming Madison or Brent directly, but anyone in the legal community would know exactly who the article was about. The story included quotes from legal ethics experts discussing the serious nature of billing fraud and its impact on client trust. But the real masterpiece was the follow-up piece that ran 2 days later. The Cost of Betrayal: How Personal Scandals Impact Professional Reputation. This one was more analytical, discussing how the modern legal profession dealt with ethical violations and personal misconduct. It mentioned that the State Bar Association was reviewing the case and that both the intern and the senior partner faced potential disciplinary action. I was reading the online version when my phone rang. Madison's name appeared on the screen. "You son of a bitch," she said without preamble. "You went to the press." "Did I?" "That's a serious accusation, Madison. I hope you have proof." "The timing is too convenient. First, Sarah gets those photos, then I get fired, then suddenly there are newspaper articles about billing fraud at law firms. Maybe it's not a coincidence. Maybe when you commit fraud and get caught, reporters write about it. That's kind of what they do. Nobody knew about the billing issues except the firm's partners, and the clients who got overcharged, and the State Bar Association, who's investigating, and probably half the legal community by now, since gossip travels fast in your world." Madison was crying again. "They kicked me out of law school, Tyler. The dean said I was a liability to the program's reputation." "That's terrible," I said, not bothering to hide my satisfaction. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know. My father won't even talk to me. He says I've embarrassed the family." "Well, you did have an affair with a married man and commit billing fraud. That's pretty embarrassing. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Brent said we'd be together. He said he loved me. Madison, the man threw you under the bus the second his wife found out about the affair. He let you take all the blame while he tried to save his own career. What part of that sounds like love to you?" "You don't understand. We had something real. You had something transactional. He got sex and ego validation. You got expensive dinners and jewelry. The only difference between you and a prostitute is that prostitutes are more honest about what they're selling." The words were cruel, but I was past caring about Madison's feelings. She'd destroyed our marriage for a fantasy, and now she was learning the cost of her choices. "I want to work this out," she said suddenly. "The divorce, I mean. I don't want to fight." "Good. My lawyer will send you the papers." Tyler, wait. Maybe we could try again. I made a mistake, but no. Just think about it. We were happy once. We could be happy again. Madison, you cheated on me for 7 months with a married man, committed billing fraud, lost your job, got kicked out of law school, and became a laughingstock in the legal community. Even if I could forgive all that, which I can't. What exactly would you bring to a reconciliation? You have no job, no prospects, and no money of your own. I could change. I could be different. You could be different, or you could be broke, because right now, you're both. I hung up before she could respond. The divorce proceedings went exactly as Janet had predicted. Without a job or any realistic prospect of future earnings, Madison had no leverage. She couldn't afford to drag out the process, and her family's lawyers advised settling quickly to avoid more public attention. We split our modest assets 50-50, which gave me about $30,000 and half the furniture from our apartment. Madison kept her car, a graduation gift from her parents, and her jewelry. The whole thing was finalized in 6 weeks. But the real satisfaction came from watching the ripple effects spread through Madison's world. Brent's divorce was a bloodbath. His wife took him for half of everything, including his partnership stake in the law firm. The partners, already embarrassed by the scandal, were happy to buy out his share at a discount. He ended up taking a job at a much smaller firm for about half his previous salary. Madison's law school classmates, who had once envied her family connections and prestigious internship, now whispered about her whenever she appeared on campus. She tried to transfer to another school, but the scandal followed her. No reputable program wanted to be associated with someone under investigation by the state bar. Franklin Ashworth's business associates began distancing themselves from the family. In their world, scandal was contagious, and nobody wanted to risk their own reputation by association. Franklin's wife, Madison's mother, was quietly dropped from several charity boards. The family's social standing, built over generations, crumbled in a matter of months, and through it all I watched from the sidelines with the satisfaction of a man who had been underestimated by people who should have known better. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Madison at a coffee shop downtown. She was working as a paralegal at a small personal injury firm, the kind of place that advertised on bus benches. Her designer clothes had been replaced by off-the-rack business wear, and she looked tired. "Tyler," she said, looking surprised to see me. "How are you?" "I'm well, thanks. How about you?" She gestured around the modest coffee shop. Living the dream, obviously. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "I heard you're working at Brennan & Associates now. It's temporary, until I figure out what to do next. What about law school?" Madison's face darkened. The State Bar Association decided not to pursue formal charges, but the disciplinary committee recommended that I not be admitted to practice for at least 5 years. Even if I finished school, I couldn't take the bar exam. "That's rough. Is it? Because you look pretty happy about it." I considered lying, playing the magnanimous ex-husband who wished her well despite everything. But Madison had never been one for polite fiction, and I didn't see any reason to start now. "I am happy about it," I said. "You destroyed our marriage because you thought you deserved better than me. You chose a man who made more money, drove a better car, could give you the lifestyle you wanted. You threw away everything we had together because I wasn't good enough for you." Madison looked down at her hands. "I know. I'm sorry." "Are you sorry because you hurt me or because it didn't work out the way you planned?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Here's what I learned from all this, Madison. You were right. You did deserve better than me. You deserved someone exactly as shallow and selfish as you are, someone who would use you the same way you used me, and then throw you away when it became inconvenient." I stood up to leave, then turned back. "By the way, I got promoted last month, senior financial analyst. The Peterson account I was working on when we split, It turned out to be worth a lot more than anyone expected. My salary is up to $120 now, plus bonuses. Madison's face went white. Tyler, I also bought a house. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, nice yard. The kind of place we used to talk about buying together. Please don't do this. Do what? Share good news with my ex-wife? I thought you'd be happy for me. I left her sitting in the coffee shop and walked to my car. Not the 10-year-old Honda anymore, but a 2-year-old Accord that I'd paid for in cash. As I drove home to my 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood, I thought about the conversation I'd had with Mike a few months earlier. Don't you feel bad about what happened to her? He'd asked. Should I? I don't know. She was your wife. You loved her once. I loved who I thought she was. Turns out that person never existed. Still, her whole life fell apart. No, Mike. Her whole life fell apart because she made a series of selfish, stupid decisions and thought she was too smart to face any consequences. I didn't destroy her life. I just refused to be collateral damage when she destroyed it herself. That conversation had crystallized something for me. Madison hadn't been the victim of some elaborate revenge plot. She'd been the victim of her own arrogance and greed. All I'd done was make sure the truth came to light, and if the truth was devastating, well, that said more about Madison than it did about me. I pulled into my driveway and sat for a moment, looking at my house. It wasn't a mansion like Franklin Ashworth's, but it was solid, comfortable, and completely mine. No mortgage, no family money with strings attached, no need to prove I was worthy of living there. Inside, I poured myself a glass of wine, not the expensive stuff Madison's family preferred, just a decent bottle I'd picked up at the grocery store, and settled into my favorite chair. My phone buzzed with a text from Janet. Saw the article in today's paper about Morrison, Klein facing additional ethics violations. Looks like the state bar is expanding their investigation. Thought you'd want to know. I smiled and set the phone aside. The ripple effects were still spreading, apparently. Brent and Madison's affair had opened up a larger investigation into the firm's billing practices, and it looked like other people were going to pay the price for their misconduct. It was almost poetic. Madison had thought she was trading up when she chose Brent over me. Instead, she'd chosen a sinking ship and dragged herself down with it. I raised my glass in a silent toast to the empty room, to justice, to consequences, to the satisfaction of watching people get exactly what they deserved, and to the knowledge that sometimes the best revenge is simply stepping out of the way and letting people destroy themselves.